Hey, everybody, it is 7 in the East. It is 4 in the West. This is your Tuesday, April 25th edition of the Strategy Session. I am Reed Galen. As always, with me, host of That Trippy Show and legendary Democratic strategist, Joe Trippy. Joe, welcome.
Great to be with you, Reed.
Author of It Was All a Lie and legendary ad man, Stuart Stevens. Stuart, how you doing?
Good to see you, Reed. Thanks for asking me to the party.
Absolutely. And host of Rick Wilson's The Enemies List and author of Everything Trump Touches Dies, the one, the only Rick Wilson. Rick, hi.
Hey man, how are you?
Well, we got a lot going on here, gang. So this morning, President Joe Biden announced that he will indeed seek a second term for the presidency in a video he put out. Very nice. I thought it was strong on visuals, strong on individual liberty, freedom, a lot of the things that he was very strong on, I thought, last fall as we got into the 2022 midterms. He said this in an article he wrote for The Atlantic in 2017, and I don't think he knew just how prescient he was going to be. He said, quote, "We are living through the battle for the soul of this nation." And Joe, I think that that's probably more true than he could have even imagined back then.
No, absolutely. And I think that is the issue. I mean, he's going to make it front and center. Remember in 2022, he got to that point late in the campaign. He started to talk this way. And I think it made a big difference in the 2022 midterms for him to get there. And now he's starting there, starting exactly where we need to be. This is about more freedom, not less freedom. And I think the video was incredibly strong at making that point. And I think the problem the press has is they keep saying, well, no, he's positioned himself well vis-a-vis Trump, but what if it's not Trump? And the reality is, no, it's vis-a-vis MAGA and the authoritarian movement to destroy democracy. And he's positioned himself exactly where we need to be. More freedom, not less freedom. Freedom to choose who to love, not get told you can't. Freedom to make decisions about your own body, not be told you can't. Which is where. So I think he's well positioned, particularly because it's going to be Trump. But even if it isn't, it's just which MAGA hat steps in to take his place.
So Stuart, it is April of the off year, late April of the off year. I remember that when I went to work for President George W. Bush's reelect, I believe it was July of '03. I think that they'd been in business probably a month by the time I got there. It was still very early. So it feels early to launch a reelection, but it's really not that far outside the window for an incumbent president to get moving.
No, I moved down to Austin in April of 1999. Stayed through our landslide. And then we went to work in the reelect about now. We're shooting a lot of footage and putting things together. It was interesting then because you didn't know who you were really going to run against. There was a long time when we thought actually this lunatic Trippy was going to pull it out for Dean. And had to go and do all this research on Dean, of which my favorite was when someone discovered that the train that more people, there were more minorities on the F train at any given moment in New York City than lived in Vermont.
Yeah, that was part of the problem.
Yeah. But I've never been in a campaign where on election night waiting for the returns, I was sorry we started too early.
Right.
So, I think they're getting themselves together early now, and it really focuses people, and it also unifies the party.
Right. And Rick, as a pilot, you know that the only runway you can't use is what's already behind you. Right.
That's correct. That is correct. Look, I think that Biden launching today is a recognition of something we've been saying for a very long time. Joe Biden will be the Democratic nominee for president. This is not a question mark.
Yeah.
And it's why I've been encouraging progressives to stop complaining and get on board. For
Right.
once in your damn lives, progressives, be like Republicans. Act like the leader of your party is the leader of your party. Don't snipe at him. Like today, we saw this sniping at him from folks that should be supporting him in New Hampshire. Bernie bro types, bitching and moaning. This is not helpful. They've got to recognize they face the most consequential moment to protect American democracy in the history of this country. It is going to be a Trump versus Biden contest. Get your shit together, people. You got to get on the board now. And the sooner Biden can start assembling a campaign, doing the fundraising, doing the nuts and bolts things that have to be done to put together a $1 billion operation run against Donald Trump. And billion, by the way, is a conservative number to run against Donald Trump. Then the sooner that happens, the better off we are in terms of being able to defeat Trump in November of 2024. And the idea that it's going to be anyone other than those two guys is increasingly a fantasy. And I don't live in fantasy world. I live in reality world.
Well, Joe, Stewart mentioned something about when you're the incumbent president and you launch your campaign, you figure you're going to have a year, right? Of clean air. I mean, obviously you got to be president of the United States. That's not exactly clean air, but politically speaking, maybe the other side is going after you day in and day out, but they're really the opposition party, the party out of power, is really going after each other as hard as
Mhm.
they can now. To Rick's point and to your earlier point, um, this thing seems to be all over but the crying. And in fact, if DeSantis is going to get in, I understand he's got to get through his legislative session, but go ahead and get in. If Pence is going to get in, then go ahead and get in. Like, let's stretch this thing out. Like, let's make it a little bit bloodier
Yeah.
and tougher on the guy before he just declares victory. I mean, he was even complaining, Joe, in the form very much of a party nominee. How dare you schedule debates without me?
Yeah. No, but Bernie Sanders today announced he isn't going to run. I mean, so there's not going to be. Rick's right.
Right.
There's not going to be any fight on. The party's starting. It is unified. Will unify further, I think. But Rick, I think hit the right thing. On the head here, in terms of the nail with the hammer. It's the $1 billion. You got to start. You got to start now to put that kind of money
More
together,
than a billion.
and probably more than $1 billion. Probably
Yeah.
two. And so I think, look, that the party is going to solidify there, but I think that I still think, and we've talked about this, Reed, that it's just amazing to me, not amazing, but that I really don't think any of these people will get in. I think and by the way, I think the way Biden, the video and everything sort of clearly did juxtapose Biden and MAGA, Biden and Trump, that contrast, it actually
Yeah.
makes it more likely that actually sort of benefits Trump in terms of solidifying the MAGA cult in his corner. I don't know. I still don't. I think this thing could be over by June or July in terms of it's down to two people, Trump and Biden. I wish that wasn't. I mean, I hope DeSantis gets in and they have a spirited battle over who's the biggest MAGA head out there. But I think Trump's already. I think Trump's already won that one.
And
Well,
Stuart, you talked. Go ahead, Rick.
go
Go
ahead,
ahead.
Lee. No, no. I was going to say, Joe, one of the things you pointed out that I think is important here is that Biden has done a framing on this campaign that very much shows the inversion of the two parties. It used to be
Mhm.
that the Republican Party was the strong foreign policy, robust national defense party. Now they are the party of Putin. You've got Ron DeSantis out this afternoon calling for a ceasefire just at the moment the Ukrainians are about to go and whip the shit out of the remaining Russians. Just at the moment Ukraine is on the verge of pushing them out, DeSantis calls for a ceasefire. You've got a party now that believes that business should be regulated by government, that business should be told how to think, talk, behave, and act by the government. That's Ron DeSantis. That's Donald Trump. You've got a party that says individual travel and freedom and autonomy should be regulated by the government. They want to know when teenage girls are having their periods. They want to know when women are traveling. They want to know if they're
Mhm.
to check their phones to see if they're going to an abortion clinic. They want a snitch program in Texas to report them. So the parties have inverted in the old cliches of what they were. I think Biden was getting to that today about freedom and liberty
Yeah.
and personal, autonomy in a way I think is important. I think it's a really important underpinning to where he's headed with this.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Stuart. The Trump campaign in 2020 tried to paint Biden as basically a Bernie Sanders socialist. They will do some of that again. They're back to tax and spend liberalism. They'll be on crime. They don't really have a vision, though, for the future. Trump will just say, it was stolen from me and I deserve 4 more years. But as you're here at the beginning, you've got to lay out. I think even now, Americans assume you're going to tell them what you're going to do when you get in office. And to Rick's point, I don't believe it's gender inspections before sports games.
Yeah, there's it goes to the heart of the issue now. There is no policy in the Republican Party.
No.
There was a time when we said that big state governors, they were the laboratory of ideas, which is probably more bullshit than we admitted. But at least there was a pretense of that. There's no big ideas here. It's bathrooms and bedrooms and anger. When you think about the last two big state governors that got elected president, Bush and Reagan, they had an expansive optimism. They were people who
Mm-hmm.
believed in the best in America. You like these people. Reagan announced in front of the Statue of Liberty. I can remember the first ad that we ever made for George Bush. Seems crazy now, but we did, was a Hispanic ad that we ran on cable television in Iowa before the primary, just to lay down that marker that he was going to compete for that audience. There's none of that now. DeSantis is just an angry, weird guy. And I
So
think this whole
weird.
idea that he's so weird. And it, the idea that he's running on Florida is crazy, because everything that you say about Florida, you can say the opposite is true. I mean, I want to see he's going to, go down there in Fantasy Fest and talk about how, he's the anti-woke candidate. Really? 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 You think, Ron? But there's no ideas, and there's no pretense of ideas. And everybody is in a box, because if you run against Trump, you have to be willing to say that you will support the nominee of the party.
Right.
If you don't, they won't let you in debates, even if they're going to have debates. And once you say that, then you can't really say that Donald Trump is a threat to the country.
Right.
So I do think Chris Christie's going to run. I do. That'll
I
be
still think you have a better
interesting to
chance
see
of being president.
if it goes anywhere. Yeah, my advice to Chris Christie would be, if he runs, to say that it was a mistake to support Trump, particularly in his reelection, not to try to marginalize it. Just come out and
Right.
do like Liz Cheney said about supporting Trump. It was a mistake. Shouldn't have
Right.
done it.
Screwed up.
Well, and Joe, I think about, as you're getting these things cranked up, as again, and we've talked about this previously, is you've got to, especially with presidential campaigns, you got, remember that I guess the last campaign with the public finance system was what, 2008, right? Obama broke the system,
Obama
and we
broke.
know,
Yeah, Obama broke
and
The
out.
we've
last
never
of
Yep.
both of them in was
Yeah.
2004.
Yeah.
with 2004, right?
Because Dean,
So.
we
Yeah.
broke it. The Dean campaign broke it, and then that everybody did after that.
Right. So, so to your point, like, it's just money, money, money. I mean, today, since the president's announcement, I've gotten 3 texts from President Biden, from Mrs. Biden, and from Vice President Harris. And I really do appreciate them taking time out of their day to ask me for $20. But that's what it's going to be, right? It's going to be
Yeah.
millions and millions of small dollar donors, and then whatever you call the big donor bundlers, right, are going to get together, and the balance of this year
Yeah.
will be gobbling up as much money as they could possibly get in the coffers.
Yeah, you got to
Yeah,
raise
and
about $80 million a month.
well, I mean
Yep.
that is why you kind of want
You
DeSantis
do.
and Trump to go at
Yeah.
it, because they're already spending each other. I mean, DeSantis is spending money on the air. Trump is spending money on the air against him. You want them to spend themselves out, while you're Joe Biden and you're hoarding it. You're not spending it. You're banking it.
Well,
And that
Jeff Rowe, and the super PAC for DeSantis today, they have dropped what looks like hundreds of thousands of mailers into 8 early states.
right.
This is Jeff Rowe being a mail guy and making his beach house money while DeSantis is still in the race. But I would love for them to spend down their money.
How many Emory
Exactly.
boards are they sending?
No,
I
no.
mean,
How many
And
is it?
what what I
iPads?
love
That
is
was
they're
the
so
greatest one.
lazy. What I love is they're so lazy. I mean, these guys are so lazy. They're using AI to make the
I
on
saw
the
that.
mega site. Yeah,
Well, but Joe,
they make
listen,
the
in all
response ad.
fairness to them, during the 2020 cycle, they kept making ads with like Russian uniforms in them. So this is
Yes.
Yeah.
probably a safer bet for them.
Yeah, it's true. True.
But Stuart, let me ask you this, on the nature of running a reelection campaign with the president. I remember leaving the White House in February of '03, did a stint at Homeland Security, and then went back to the reelect. And I was a member of the White House staff and all the things that came with, up to the moment I left East Exec or West Exec, and then I got to the campaign and you're on the phone with the White House, and it's like you're a kindergartner being talked to by a high school senior again, right? It's like, what are you guys doing over there?
Right.
Yeah, it's a big, big problem. There's always a problem between headquarters and the plane.
Right.
And that's sort of dynamic, which I've always compared to kind of Apollo 13. Like Houston thinks that the astronauts are crazy and, need some sleep. And when you're up in the capsule, you think that nobody's really caring about you down in Houston.
Right.
And then that's magnified when you have sort of three entities here. You have the presidential campaign plan, you have Air Force One, or four entities, the White House, and then the campaign itself. And it's very difficult to integrate those. I think in the
Sure.
Bush world, 2004, because of Karl Rove, we had continuity. We're able to do it. It's going to be interesting because, I mean, Joe would know best on this, but there doesn't seem to be a lot of continuity between the 2000 Biden campaign and 2024 campaign, as far as same person's not going to be running it. And that wasn't true. I mean, Carl really ran the campaign.
I mean, it is a kind of a
I,
different thing, though. I mean, as an incumbent president, Biden is structurally in a much better position. Um, and he had to go. There's no real primary this time. I mean, I'm always blown away. If you guys remember in the beginning of LP in 2019, we were thinking, "Oh God, it's going to be Bernie or Elizabeth Warren. How do we
Mm.
shape this message?"
Mm-hmm.
And we thought we
Yeah.
wouldn't get lucky and get Biden, and we ended up getting lucky and got Biden. So I think he's got a lot less work to do than he had in 20, obviously, on the idea of a primary side thing, and I think that there's a tremendous opportunity to use this campaign to broaden the base a little bit in the party. You're not playing as much of a primary game. You can go out and talk to wider audiences, I think,
Mm-hmm.
if they do it
You know,
smartly.
yeah,
well,
I think
Joe,
I got
what?
to say, let
I
me just
think
say
that
one thing here, because I wasn't involved in the Lincoln Project when you guys, but I think one of the brilliant things that you guys did was you went out and said that the race was about Trump at a time when there was a not crazy becoming conventional wisdom in the Democratic Party that whatever you said about Donald Trump wouldn't matter because everyone's opinion about Donald Trump was fixed. I mean, Elizabeth Warren articulated that very well. And you guys went out and said, no, it is about Donald Trump, which ended up more or less being the same message, soul of the nation, that Joe Biden did. But when you were saying it, as you say, Joe, there was no reason to believe that Biden was going to be the nominee. And I think it's one of the
Right.
most valuable contributions that the Lincoln Project made very early on to shaping this race.
yeah,
So, Joe,
I
go
was
ahead. Go ahead, Joe.
yeah, I was going to question a little bit about him not having the same. Biden is, if anything, he is surrounded by people at the top. I mean, of his political brain trust, they are the same
Same
exact
people.
people who've been there forever with him, and they know him. He knows them. There's no. I think it's one of the things that Bush and Rove had, where you knew that there was nobody. You're not going to kill Karl Rove. It wasn't going to happen. I mean, the people at the top understood and were not fighting with each other. They had one thing, their commitment to W. The
Right.
same thing is true with Biden. And so I think you will have a different person potentially being the nuts and bolts
That's interesting.
runner of the campaign, but the brain trust is the same exact group of people. Anita Dunn, and I mean we can go through them. We all know them, and they all have, I think, his trust, and everybody in that circle trust each other, which is really important. I think what was interesting about what it looks like his choice for campaign manager Chavez, the granddaughter of Cesar Chavez, is um, if she indeed ends up being named the manager, which I think is happening, uh, it's it may show that they're really focused and understand that this is. People are reading it as this is to reach out to Hispanic Latino voters. I'm sure that's partially true, but more importantly, this is one of the better organizers in the
Right.
party. And this could be, look, if it's a focus on turning out the vote, registering people in the 8 states that we need that matter here for the electoral college, this is a good choice. So you have that brain trust in place. And what they've learned from 2020 and 2022 is how close these things can be. And it's not just ads and it's not just the digital stuff, it's on the ground and it's organizing. And I think she's the right pick here. Not just as a nuts and bolts manager running the thing, but focusing on that on organizing and making sure we get those 40,000 votes we're going to need in Georgia to not win by 14,000, but by 54, 64,000.
Well,
You
let
don't
me
think
just
he
say
really
that.
won, do you?
Well, let me just say this as in my experience on a presidential reelection campaign was that I judged my day by how many times I'd been yelled at by lunch, either by my boss in the campaign or the person that I answered to at the White House. And I didn't have a lot of great days. Let's just put it that way. Somebody was always yelling at me. So, but
You know
that's
who had
the
a bad day
that's the nature of
yesterday?
the beast.
You had a bad day
Well,
yesterday?
the one, so yes, good segue, Rick. Smooth as silk
I've
as
been
always.
waiting for it.
So all right, so guys, let's shift gears here. So yes, um, if Donald Trump is the leader of the MAGA movement, then for many years now, Tucker Carlson has been its tribune. There has not been a line he wouldn't cross as far as his actions, as far as his utterances, his words, his beliefs are concerned. He has had the perch of all perches at Fox News. And yesterday, he is unceremoniously tossed out on his keister. There's various stories about Rupert deciding, he didn't like this, he didn't like that. Rick, what do you think?
Look, I think this is and I had a tweet storm about this morning, and we have yet to see how big of a deal this is. Tucker was a keystone in the entire edifice of the right-wing media machine. He was a guy that Steve Bannon and Stephen Miller used to launder their white replacement racist rhetoric. They used him as a vector to get that sort of message out into the world. The alt-right folks, or the Proud Boy types, the Charlottesville types, viewed him as, quote, our guy. They saw him as somebody who could launder with a preppy outfit and fancy loafers, the sort of things that the Klan would blush at saying at times. They saw on the conspiracy right Tucker as a way to put out these messages about Ray Epps and COVID and Soros and all the other insanity stuff, to convince Fox viewers that the world is this giant conspiracy against them. And on the respectable gentry conservative right, they looked at Tucker's wealth and credentials and his preppy affect as a way to try to push messages from that angle. He was a very big connector and a font where the right wing culture wanted to be seen on Tucker Carlson. I
Yeah.
spoke to somebody who is very clear on what Ron DeSantis's campaign plan was, and they literally said the words, "We're going to win the Tucker primary."
Mhm.
That's how important Tucker was in the idea that Ron DeSantis could win the primary. This entire edifice that Rupert broke over the weekend, it is going to ripple out. There are going to be much bigger effects from this than anybody's ever quite imagined yet.
Well, also, just I think sometimes a guy like Rupert Murdoch needs to remind the DJs who owns the radio station, right?
Yes.
It ain't the guy doing drive time in the afternoon. All right, so Stuart, let me ask you this. So there was this story out of Vanity Fair
Mhm.
that one of the things that Murdoch got a little bit spooked by, and this goes a little bit to Rick's talk about how ingrained Carlson was in the culture, was that Tucker was giving a speech at the Heritage Foundation. It got very messianic. It got very religious.
Yeah.
And that was something that really Rupert just didn't like. Now, again, who knows what the various things are that went into it? It could have been a collection of things. But that's interesting because that is much more sort of the northeastern elite Republican, right? Like be religious, but don't be loud about it, right? Go to
Right.
church, but now here you see that and it turns out that his now ex fiance was really into Tucker. I mean, it's just like it's life imitating art sometimes.
Yeah, if I had to bet, I would think that those are like stories about Ivanka and Jared that Ivanka and Jared posted. I think that that's a story that Rupert Murdoch got posted to indicate that he really had principles and he was really worried about, the fate of the nation and,
Right.
The
the fact that
integrity
there
of
was going to
Fox's
be
journalism.
Right.
religious extremism was going to take over. I think it was about if I had to bet, I think it is a continuation of the Roger Ailes uh, toxic culture involving women at that organization.
Yeah.
And I think that when they got hold of these text messages and these emails, and they gave people a chance to talk to them, as definitely happened in these depositions, I think that the ugliness of this was and the potential legal liabilities. Who knows how many settlements they've paid involving Tucker Carlson? I would doubt the number is zero. So that, if I had to bet, I think that that would be the most logical and predictive given Tucker Carlson.
So Joe, you think? I mean, you used to have a gig at Fox. So you think it's all nuts and bolts? You think it's all just dollars and cents, nuts and bolts?
Yeah, I mean, look, I worked. Actually, it's bizarre because I was with MSNBC when Tucker was at MSNBC as an anchor, and then I was at Fox. And at MSNBC, he was like kind of like the the compassionate conservative guy, right? I mean,
Right.
the reasonable conservative. And so I've watched this arc. He doesn't. That's what you realize if you go back and watch him at MSNBC and him at Fox. He doesn't believe in shit. He doesn't believe
Right.
in a damn
He's a
thing.
nihilist.
Yeah,
No.
he believe but it's about the money and and wanting to be the guy that the right clings to, and he got there, which is why, I mean, knowing him, I think it's going to be hard for him to resist wanting to actually take a look at running. I'm not saying he will, because I agree with Rick and Stewart about why this may have happened and why that might not be such a great idea. Why he may have to keep his head low for a small amount of time here. But no, he's not going to keep his head down. This guy's coming right back, whether it's in his own platform, or frankly, he could be the one guy that might be able to be a contender to Trump.
Well,
And
I
by the
made
way,
that point this morning.
yeah,
so Rick, yeah, let's talk about that because you look at social media and maybe it's not the real world, but it is real, and there's a lot of trolls and MAGA types that hang out there, and everyone from Ivan to 01382522 at gmail.com to Marjorie Taylor and Matt Gaetz are saying never Trump, never Fox. They gave into the woke brigade. They were always rhinos. It's fascinating to see how quickly that mob turns on what was the flagship.
Yeah, look, they are having a full blown. Fox is having $1 billion meltdown in its stock price because the MAGAs have gone crazy, and it's exactly at the wrong moment for them. But my theory of the case with Tucker, I've been rolling this around in my head all day today. He's the one guy who could go in a Republican primary and actually give Trump a problem. He is personally wealthy. He could have an online fundraising presence tomorrow that would rival or exceed Trump. He's got 100% name ID with conservative voters. He knows how to work the camera. He knows how to talk to people. He's actually more engaging in person than Ron DeSantis by an order of magnitude.
Not a
Much
high
more.
bar.
Do I think he will? Doubtful. Do I think he
Well, one
could?
thing,
Yeah.
Well, that would sort of be like Goebbels taking on Hitler in a primary, right? Like
yeah,
it's
but
just not.
if this stuff came out about women, why do we think it wouldn't help him?
Well,
He'd probably
that's
make ads
right.
true
about
This
too.
Yeah,
You
Yeah.
know, I
exactly.
mean,
I mean,
this
that's
is, you know, you don't forget. I mean, as we speak, there's a rape trial going on for the, you know, former president, leading contender to be the president, and that just seems fine with women who support Trump or men who support Trump. I mean,
And
a guy who said his defense that he didn't rape E. Jean Carroll is she's not my type. Which is why,
and what
just for the
Right.
record, I have
no,
zero respect for any woman who worked for Trump ever, because you
and then
knew
the
this. You knew this, Kellyanne Conway. You knew what it was like. You knew all these people knew. Now, I don't think men should be held to a different standard, but there's something particularly despicable about women who will work for someone who, after they've bragged on audio about assaulting women, that they did.
What's the over
what
under?
is
Are you guys of Kellyanne coming back to Trump world?
1,000%.
Yeah,
You mean
yeah,
that's where I'm at
in a
too.
paid fashion,
Yep.
or I would
well,
think that they would want to keep her out just for power sense.
Well, this is the right point though, because we've talked about the power of Trump's team, or not the power of Trump's team, but the talent of Trump's team. But you know, we not even in the back of your mind, but in the front of your mind. Remember, Trump has always wanted. You know, I'm going to call it a team of rivals, but it's certainly not Lincolnian. He likes them fighting with
Yeah,
each other
you're right.
because it makes
No, it's
him
a really
feel in
good point.
charge. And so, if
Yeah,
you
He
know, look,
loved having
yeah, it's a very
Bannon
good
and
point.
Miller and Gorka as one power center, and the guys from Wall Street as another power center, and the insane people like Rich Grenell fighting against Mattis, and there was always a yeah. It's not like a team of rivals in the Lincoln sense. It's more like a Hunger Games thing.
right? Who
Yeah,
shall
well,
He
you know,
prevail?
loved
Trump.
it.
Who will live
so,
Yeah,
through the
So
contest?
Trump's
one
management
thing,
model has always been to take people who would never have the job that they would have otherwise, and
right?
he'll give them that job. It's how, you know, Tony Soprano ran things. You give uh, somebody a job. They know they don't deserve the job. They know that if they quit, they can never get a job like that. So
Right.
that's Kellyanne Conway. It's not that these people like Bannon or Kellyanne Conway or Lewandowski woke up in 2016, 15 and wanted to be involved in presidential campaigns. They always were.
Right.
Right.
They were
Joe, go
always
ahead.
trying to get in the game.
Now, I had one thing that not to change the subject back a little bit here, but it
By the
seemed to me
time
that
they got to the plane, but from the airport to the headquarters, they had decided they wouldn't hire and wanted to turn around and go back. So, you know, that's how he did it. So I don't know. I mean, I think La Vida is of a different standard, though, if we
yeah,
said than
Yeah.
any of those people
I
previously.
think
we've
he is.
talked
Joe,
about
go
this.
ahead.
Where, yeah, he has a much better team around him this time that knows what they're
Yeah.
doing, which is a little scary. But here's the question I wanted to ask is that AI video that Trump put out. If you look at it, it is the Tucker Carlson show, right? It's the
Sure.
dystopian.
Mhm.
It's
Yeah.
his message. So if this is why I think Rick's right that he could be the guy that would give him a run. The question I've got is, what would Fox do? I mean, what did Murdoch and the Fox and Fox News do if Tucker gets in? I mean, how they can't ignore it, right? I mean, you could be it could
It's a good
this could
question.
be something
Well,
really.
listen, I don't. I think June's not too early to start the war on Christmas coverage.
But look, I mean, this is the one thing is like, I mean, if Tucker, look, let's just say this: if Tucker gets in, you know, all bets are off, right? Because here's the one thing we know, and I think you guys have all alluded to it, but let's just hit the nail on the head. DeSantis, Pence, Haley, Scott, all of them, they're politicians. They're conventional politicians. They abide by, even when they don't want to, even in their worst form, right? Ron
Right.
DeSantis abides by some politician's creed, right? Gets asked in, you know, Japan, are you going to run for president? I'm not a candidate, right? Like, because he worries about that stuff, whereas Donald Trump doesn't care, right?
Yeah.
Carlson's the same way. He doesn't live by those rules. The laws of political gravity so far that should have applied to him have not yet. So you know, where would Fox be? Fox would be, I think, where they will be wherever they think they are most likely to back the winner, right? Because
Mhm.
at
Right.
the end of the day, Rupert wants to choose the president. He wants to be the
Yep.
guy who
You
said,
know,
"I got the president."
let's talk about that
But
for a second, because it it's interesting to me that when people say that Fox formed the Republican Party, Fox was happy to back George Bush. You can't find two more
Sure,
different people than George Bush and Trump. They were happy to back Mitt Romney.
sure.
You know, they are chasing a market, not creating that market.
Mhm.
Right.
And I think that if you look, Trump wasn't their pick in the primary in 15,
Right.
16.
No, it was
Romney
Ted
wasn't.
Cruz.
Romney wasn't their pick in 12. I mean, we went through all this stuff with Fox. Had had to negotiate this. Then when he won the nomination, they're like, okay, we'll be for Romney. They weren't for Bush. So, their ability to impact that, I think, has been proven to be not what their sort of myth of Fox is. One thing about Tucker, if he ran, it would be fun. People would like to go to a Tucker Carlson event.
Mhm.
Yeah, he's
It
a
would,
shit stirrer. He the
yeah,
guy will the guy will
But
it would
again,
be
that's
entertaining.
that's that's like Trump, right?
Yeah,
People don't go to
exactly,
Trump rallies
exactly.
because they expect a long recitation of his policy pronouncements.
I
They
know,
go
and you
because
go
they want to see the T-shirt vendors and hear the classic rock and see all the crazy shit with the
and,
Yeah.
and just
the
wonder what he'll
cheerleaders
say
from
next.
Rockwall and everything else, right?
Yeah,
look, look.
DeSantis, you feel like you got to go down on the pound and watch him gas puppies to cheer up afterwards. I mean, it's just a death march watching
The
this
guy
guy.
is a miserable son of a bitch. By the
Yeah,
way,
it's like,
I
oh
somebody
man.
somebody noted this a few minutes ago. Ron DeSantis wrote a book back in 2015 or whatever it
Yep,
was, or 2013.
13.
He had a quote in it that said, "As someone who saw himself as a figure of planetary significance, it is perhaps not surprising Obama decided to give a campaign speech on foreign soil, as if he were already a head of state. Where the son of a bitch is over right now meeting with the prime minister of Japan, asking to be carried around basically like he's already a head of state.
Right. They just need a
Irony
litter.
is a cruel goddess."
Well, and look, I once saw a bumper sticker that says "Karma's only a bitch when you are." So,
Well,
all right, so guys, as we wrap up here, I just looked this up because I had to Google it. We are 560 days to Election Day 2024. I'm sorry to put that on the board, but that's where we are. So, Joe, in a week full of surprises, what else are you looking at?
Look, I think this. I still think unless something like Tucker happens, this is over in June, July, and it's Trump versus
yeah,
Biden, and
honestly.
and I actually think what I'm looking at is what's the number that Biden puts up. I mean, they announced today. Everybody out there, I know, chipping in. You're gonna, as Reed said, he's already gotten 3 or 4 emails. But I think the number he puts up in this quarter is going to be pretty important. And so I think that's part of the thing we need to look at and need to encourage people to do. I mean, if you're on the pro democracy side of this thing, and you got $20, chip it in, because I think it'll make a difference to build that part up. And also,
As of noon today, it was like 2.5 million in the space of 3 hours since the
yeah,
announcement, and 38,000 donors at that point. I haven't seen the number since then, but it's going to be a meaningful bump, and it's going to be important because as the Republicans solidify again, Trump will start milking that donor list, and it will shock everybody again how many people out there are willing to cash their disability check for that guy.
Yep.
Hmm. Stuart, how about you?
Um, I think that once this race settles in, I think that Joe Biden is going to be behind Trump until the Democratic convention. And I think you should just prepare for it. And one of the things I like about the Biden team is they've been behind before. And I think one of Biden's strengths in this last race was that he had lost before. I always like clients that had lost before because they can imagine what it's like.
Learns a lesson.
Yeah. And I think that um, there should not be panic when Trump is ahead. You should realize that the problem with the unimaginable is it's difficult to imagine. And we should start imagining Donald Trump as president. And him being ahead, I think, which he will be for months and months and months, will in the end be a positive because you'll have to realize this could happen.
All right, Rick, how about you?
Look, I think we're going to see a very consequential summer this year, when normally this is the summer where there's a lot of maneuvering and the submarine warfare of raising money. All the Republicans have either died or dying. They just don't know it yet. I mean, Nikki
Yeah,
Haley's out today, hip deep, trying to explain her abortion position.
That was
Mike Pence is
embarrassing.
going to have a failure to launch. Chris Christie is, he's going to win every green room at ABC and nothing else. All this is just noise on the Republican side. And it's important that our friends in the media don't fall victim to listening to and pretending in some way that there's going to be a horse race here. There's not a horse race here. All these people were overpriced stocks, and so this race will be on again. I think in the summer, and it is not going to stop. It's going to be very long. Everybody's don't quit, just rest is the philosophy here. But everybody needs to be ready for a very long haul, and it will get ugly, and they will start trying to turn America into this image of a hellscape with crime and culture wars and all those things. I think we're in for a very long 563 days.
yeah, Joe, go
Hey,
ahead.
Reed, can I just hop in for a sec? Yeah, the
Sure.
one thing I saw in the chat, and I think it's right, and I should have said this too, is that I still think Biden's video today and the messaging really does play into the call for Senate hearings on democracy. I mean, it really kind of tees that
Yeah.
up for the Democrat. We have the Senate to actually start, and on the whole Fox mess, Brian Murdoch, all of them. And I think that would be something to look for or to encourage as well.
Yeah, well, look, and I think that, as always, as we implore our Democratic friends, once in a while you gotta do something that makes you, feel uncomfortable. That this is the business we've chosen, as a famous movie once said. And if you're not, my dad, who worked in politics for a million years, whenever I would gripe about something, said, "Welcome to the NFL, pal." Right? So like this
Right.
is this is what we got to do. And as we all know, right, Joe, you're featured prominently in it. There's a book by a guy named Richard Ben Kramer, which is my political Bible personally. It's 1,000 pages about the 1988 campaign.
Yep.
And, it's not only about whether or not your favorite candidate has what it takes. You have to ask yourself, do you have what it takes to get through this in the next 560 days, the next 18 months? And I'll tell you this, as Stuart often likes to say this, guys, right? These are the times that don't create us, they reveal us. And I think that in the next 18 months, we're going to see that the American people have done right by democracy and by themselves in the last two elections. I think they're going to do it again, but it's not just going to happen magically. All right, before we get out of here, Rick Wilson, The Enemies List. Download, rate 5 stars. Joe Trippy, That Trippy Show. Download, rate 5 stars. Reed Galen, The Lincoln Project Podcast. Stuart
Download, rate
Stevens.
5 stars.
Stuart
Yes.
Stevens is going to have the 9.7 millionth podcast coming out any day now. Everybody, thanks for watching. We'll see you next week. Have a great night.
See you
Good night,
guys.
folks.
Take care.
Thanks, everybody. It's fun.